I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Thank you to Carrie C. and to the Psych Nerd. So, somebody recommended this today, and the video that we're going to take a look at. I appreciate each and every one of you. Hey, Afton, I can't say this one, but hello. Thank you all for joining. Let's hop right into an overview and timeline of today's case. So, we are going to be taking a look at, and let me just share this screen. And I have a link to this timeline down in the description. Okay. So the victim in this case is Jasmine Pace. And the person she was dating at the time, Jason Chen, he is the one that's on trial for her capital M. Okay. And it's a YouTube thing. Why I have to say capital M. If anyone has questions about that, let me make this a little bigger. Okay. So in early 2022, Jasmine meets Jason on a dating app. They were both college students at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, and they began dating. On Tuesday, November 22nd of 2022, there are phone records that show that Pace speaks with Chen on the phone for about an hour and 11 minutes. After that call, Pace, the victim in this case, goes to his apartment, and later in the evening, she texts her mother to tell her she will be staying at the house of a friend of hers for the rest of the week. Um, and then on uh okay, so then it's my understanding that something, I believe they thought something happened on Thanksgiving. I thought it might be Thursday, but y'all can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, because I do know that Katarina, we are currently on day 2 of this trial. So there was testimony that happened yesterday, but the allegations in this case are that Jason and what the defense says happened. So the defense is calling this a crime of passion. The state is saying it was first degree capital M. All right. So that is where we are with this case. There were some things that came up with the expert, and we need to talk about it. Okay. The audio on this is not great. And so I turned my volume down a little. If I need to turn my volume down more, let me know if there's a big difference between the two. Um, and let me just clarify. So this case started on January 13th. And the expert that we're going to listen to the proffer of his testimony outside of the presence of the jury, because the state objected to this testimony coming in because it was submitted so late. So it's my understanding that the expert met with the defendant on last week, on Tuesday, on January 7th, or like I think it was January 7th. And the state received a report, I think, on January 10th. And they had no time to voir dire the jury on any potential mental health issue, or on any potential mental health defense, if that's what the defense was going to do. This expert is going to say that he did not diagnose Jason Chen with anything. And it's this is it ends up being a lot. We're going to play a little bit of the prosecution being upset, because the prosecution, I just thought this part was interesting. So once again, this is outside of the presence of the jury. This is before opening statements. All of this kind of happens. We're gonna see if we can speed it up to 1.25. Y'all know, I'm sorry. I will slow it down if I need to slow it down. Okay? Let's get into this. The prosecution is about to get up and talk.
The defense states that it was only once they learned the demon theory of the state's demon theory that they realized that the state was going to allege that she was shackled at the time the injuries occurred. But that timeline actually doesn't work in terms of the timeline of their expert witness, because the meeting that we had with them in which we discussed and went over the demonstrative exhibit was December 13th. The day that they got that demonstrative exhibit was December 11th. Based on email communication and the representation of defense counsel, they confirmed Dr. Lewis's availability on December 7th. Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
There are many reasons to retain an expert. Mr. Wise approached me on it. I wasn't sure exactly how this expert could be used. It might be just for consultation, it might be for sitting in court and cross-examination.
So I'm going to do what I can because the volume on the original is just low. So I'm going to do what I can to try to see if I can boost it some. If I can't, I will turn my volume down some to hopefully not blow out y'all's eardrums. And I also have the closed captions on because, like I said, the audio on here is not great. And so the judge is not going to allow this testimony to be made in front of the jury. And instead, what the judge is going to allow is for there to be a proffer. And this is just for the appeal. So this testimony, once again, not in front of the jury. This jury is actually sequestered. So this jury is being held in a hotel. They are separated. The judge will even stop this testimony during the time that the jury might be passing by outside of the courtroom. And so this all happens outside of the presence of the jury. Jason Chen has on glasses and a dark suit because there are older pictures. I think at the time of his arrest, he looked very different than how he looks now. All right. So let's go on ahead and take a look at this. Ooh. The expert is about to start.
I do. Felix, no, we got figured out this way. Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Can you hear me? Yes, I can. Okay. Can you please state your name? I am Dr. Douglas E. Lewis Jr. And Dr. Lewis, what do you do for a living? I am a forensic psychologist. What is a forensic psychologist?
And also, just a heads up, if you have on headphones, I only have this coming in on my left side. I don't have it coming in on the right. So I don't know how it's being streamed out to you all, but just in case, this audio is only coming in my left ear. All right. So he is a forensic psychologist.
A forensic psychologist is a clinical psychologist who uses psychological principles to answer legal issues. How long have you been doing that? I have been in practice solo for about 5 years now. To become a forensic psychologist, do you have to get an education? Yes. So you have to. Go ahead. So you have to earn a graduate degree, in particular a doctorate in psychology. And in order to do that, one must have 4 years of didactic instruction, in addition to 3,000 hours, usually minimum, in practicum experiences, which is hands-on experience under supervision. Then one must go through a match process in order to get a predoctoral internship, which is a year.
Okay, so this part is just explaining what it takes to be a psychologist. Now we're going to get into his schooling, and I researched a few things on the back end, and I want to help explain some things. So let's get into his history with his school.
So initially, I earned my bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia in mathematics, finance concentration in 2009. And then later, I earned a terminal master's degree of education in clinical mental health counseling from Lynchburg College, which is now referred to as University of Lynchburg, in 2013. And then in 2019, I graduated with a doctor of psychology and clinical psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Washington, D.C. And then later, I completed a postdoctoral fellowship at Emory School of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry and Law Service in 2020. And when did you graduate with your doctorate? I graduated in 2019 with my doctorate. And you've been practicing for the last 5 years? Yes. And where did you?
So this trial is happening in Tennessee, and what he did was he reached out to the board of Tennessee to get special permission to have to have it's not really licensure, but he received permission from the board of psychology in Tennessee to be able to meet with this case. So a terminal degree it just means that that's the highest level that they didn't, it wasn't a doctorate of education. So for some reason, the, the degree that he received, and I don't know why he called it a terminal master's. I think it just means that there wasn't a doctorate in that available. So I have friends that started our doctorate of psychology program together. So I went to a 5-year PsyD program, and some people did not finish the program but earned enough credits to get a master's in psychology, a master's in clinical psychology, but they did not complete the doctorate in clinical psychology. Because normally, if you have a master's in clinical psychology, you would go on to get a doctorate depending on what you wanted to do. A person can get licensed, but there are normally extra hoops you have to jump through and all of those things. Hey, Tanika. Hey, everyone. Please let me know if y'all have questions as we are listening to this. The state is going to the state is going to go in pretty because they're going to question if he should be entered as an expert. And so some of this is going to come up again. So because he's going to repeat some of this information that he gives to the defense. I'm trying to see when the state gets up. Okay, this is her. Okay. Because the state questioned his ability to be entered as an expert. All right. So he has a lot of clinical experience working in forensic settings. He's licensed in Georgia. And like I said, he received special permission to be able to meet with this defendant. So let's start from here.
This is just a proffer.
I'm proceeding if you want to even have him qualified as an expert.
So the judge is asking if the state wants to have him entered as an expert witness. I'm going to slow her down because she is going to get a little spicy, and let's listen to it on regular speed.
Sure. Just say would like while you're the witness. Dr. Lewis, you said that you got your doctor of psychology in 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But you were not licensed as a psychologist until 2021. Is that correct?
That is incorrect. I was licensed in August 2020.
Okay, August 2020. And then in Virginia, it was August of 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so licensed as a psychologist, and your degree is in clinical psychology, which is different than forensic psychology, correct?
It is the generalist form, but forensic psychology is a specialty. One must be a clinical psychologist in order to be a forensic psychologist.
And he's correct with that. There might be a forensic specialization at a school, but forensic psychologists are normally licensed as clinical psychologists. Forensic psychology is a subset, just like developmental psychology, or there are different subsets or different specialties that people can receive.
So I'm sorry. Did you get a degree in forensic psychology or clinical psychology?
No such degree exists. You cannot get a doctorate in forensic psychology and practice as a forensic psychologist. You must be a clinical psychologist first, and then you must specialize in forensic psychology.
I understand. Okay. And you stated that the Chicago School of Professional Psychology is in Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
Yes, I was at the Washington, D.C. campus.
You went to school physically in Washington, DC?
No, I did not. So essentially what happened was I earned my degree, or I matriculated at the Georgia School of Professional Psychology in Atlanta, Georgia. While I was on.
Okay. So this is where I had to do some research. So the Georgia School of Professional Psychology closed in 2019. So the year he was supposed to graduate in April, the Georgia School of Professional Psychology, they closed. And I wonder if this was under, so I do not I will just leave out, because there was another university, Argosy University. They ended up having a similar situation where so let me show you what happened with Argosy University. Okay. Um let me find that link. I know I opened it. Hopefully I didn't. Good. All right, here we go. So let me share this tab. Let me make this bigger. Okay. So the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and Argosy University. So he said a different school. He said the Georgia School of Psychology. I have no clue if that's related to this one, but it might have been a similar situation. So the government started cracking down on universities that were not accredited. So they stopped giving federal funding to universities where the degrees were pretty much going to be useless. like the degrees were not meeting a certain standard, or like there were issues with management. There were issues coming up. This is my understanding of what happened. Please correct me in the chat if anything is incorrect with this. But there's a teach out agreement that was made between the Chicago School of Professional Psychology and Argosy University, where the students that were at Argosy were able to receive a degree from the School of Professional Psychology. Like they were able to waive these admission fees and application fees, and this applied to their bachelor's in criminal justice, the PsyD in clinical psychology, and the location options were Chicago, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Orange County, and Washington D.C., or a master's in clinical mental health counseling only at the DC campus. And there were all of these qualifications and requirements for these individuals, that they had to be in good academic standing, they had to provide this proof, and that they would be able to receive their degree and transfer credits to be able to get the degree from this other institution. Now, that can cause issues, but so that's what happened. I was confused when all of this was being talked about, and so oh, all right. I had another tab open and I started hearing myself talking. All right. So let's go on ahead and go back to his testimony. And then y'all will understand what kind of happened behind the scenes.
Pre-doctoral internship at the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Unfortunately, this school abruptly closed while I was in a pre-doctoral internship. And so what happened was the American Psychological Association, in addition to the Department of Education, moved those of us who were affected by the school's abrupt closure to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Washington, D.C. So essentially, it was somewhat of a pro forma or formality in terms of a teach-out agreement that was reached by the Department of Education and the American Psychological Association in 2019.
You went to online school.
No, sir. Excuse me. No, ma'am. You cannot go to online school and graduate and get a license in Georgia. You must go in person. I went in person for 4 years to get my didactic instruction, and then I matched to my first choice at the Superior Court of the District of Columbia.
But on your resume, it states from 2015 to 2019, you were a psychometrist in Atlanta, Georgia.
I went to school in Atlanta, Georgia, ma'am.
And so that's why this was the confusing part, because his school from Georgia closed and his degree was confirmed from the DC campus, but he attended in Georgia. And Psychometrician, because he's going to get into this, this is the individual that, so if you're getting psychological testing, there might be someone that normally at least has a master's degree, but they have some training in administering and scoring psychological testing, and they give the test instead of the psychologist. For my testing, I do all of my testing myself and I score, write the reports. Sometimes people pay other people to administer, and then the psychologist oversees the report. And so it was this was so they're going to go back and forth.
Your resume says that you went to the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so let me explain again.
I'm sorry, I'm confused. Yeah, I'm very confused.
I know I'm gonna help you if you allow me to, ma'am. So I matriculated at the Georgia School of Professional Psychology, which was located in Atlanta, Georgia. While going to school in person, because I come from humble beginnings, I also had to work. So I worked as a psychometrist alongside with getting my doctorate from the Georgia School of Professional Psychology. Part of the training in psychology is this. You must go to school for 4 years and receive didactic instruction and practical experiences. Then you must match at an APA or American Psychological Association accredited internship. I matched at my first choice, which was the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. While I was on pre-doctoral internship, which is a year-long working supervised experience, my school, the Georgia School of Professional Psychology, abruptly closed around March the 8th of 2019. The Department of Education and the American Psychological Association.
Okay, so I explained all of that. They're also going to talk about what a psychometrician is, but he's going to get into some of his thoughts and some of his testing. And so let's skip ahead past his education. They are also going to mention qualified mental health professional in Virginia. So I watched this on Recovery Addict Stream, and I have no issue with this expert. I'm sorry that his name is also Dr. Lewis, because my channel has a very popular Dr. Lewis from the past. That so this is not that Dr. Lewis, but he's being brought in to try to say that the defendant didn't have the mental capacity. I don't know, like there's something about the defendant's mental state that he didn't premeditate it. I know. And so he's not that Dr. Lewis. he's he's it's not the female, it's not Dorothy Lewis. I believe it's Dorothy. It's not that Dr. Lewis. And he did a decent job. I understand why the prosecution didn't feel that his testimony should come before the jury, and the judge agreed. And it was also entered late. If this case is appealed, this testimony could possibly come in on appeal down the road. And that's why the defense wanted him to still give his testimony, because it just helps reserve things for appeal. So qualified mental health professional in Virginia, because he's going to say that he worked with his bachelor's in math, that he was able to work at a psychiatric hospital, or I think it was, he worked somewhere in Virginia. So it's it's a qu so it's he was a direct care staff. So qualified mental health professional in Virginia, they can do intensive in-home therapy, they can do intensive school-based therapy, sorry, not even there, because they can't call what they're doing therapy. So I used to, so the state did not have time to depose him. He did, today's January 14th. This happened yesterday the trial started on January 13th. He met with the defendant on January 7th, and the state received a report on January 10th or 11th, on Saturday. The state was not happy. So the state felt blindsided by this. And the judge agreed that this testimony would not come into the trial. Okay. But there were questions about this. And the matching process is for internship. So I matched with my first choice as well, Virginia Treatment Center for Children. That's where I did my pre-doctoral internship, because there's a postdoc that you do after you graduate as two. And so it is a match process like medical doctors. It is a very competitive process. I applied to 3 or 4 different places, and I matched with my first choice. It is this computer system. I think it's called APIC, APPIC, I believe. And it is a matching process that, because you have to rank your choices, and you could get any of those possible choices. And then the facility ranks the people they want to, and there's a magical process that happens where you can match with a possible program. There are some people that don't match with a APA accredited program, and they either have to create their own internship or they have to wait a year to apply for internship again. So that's because you interview for this. It's a very hard process. And so I wanted to make sure to clarify that part. All right. And so let's get to the substance of this as it relates to Jason Chen. Okay, here we go. We're starting to get there. Because the state is going to go back and forth. And all right. So let's start from here.
Evaluation as well as a criminal responsibility evaluation. So these things happen pre-adjudication. They're not sentencing or mitigation.
Where do those reports go?
Okay, so the stand trial evaluations typically go to the court. Now, the criminal responsibility evaluations go to the defense typically, because that's usually more of an ex parte issue. And when it comes to sanity or criminal responsibility, essentially people see it as a legal strategy at times, because it depends on how the attorney wants to work through the case. So those types of reports only go to the defense attorney typically, because the individual is admitting that they committed the crime, and I'm evaluating their thoughts or actions or behaviors before the crime, during the crime, and after the crime. And for that reason, typically those reports do not go to anyone but the defense attorney, who decides how they want to work the case.
They're never intended to be introduced in a trial or in a hearing for the defendant's guilt, right?
I can't say that because I'm not an attorney. I'm not sure how they use it afterwards.
Well, where is that report in this case?
Pardon me?
Where is that report?
So he submitted a 7-page memorandum, or he didn't submit a report. He submitted a 7-page, but I think all of this happened very quickly. So this case has been waiting for trial for 2.5 years, for 2 years, and for over 2 years. And like, so yeah. And the defense just reached out to him in December. He's also, I don't know that we're going to hear it. He also had a trip to some part of Africa over the Christmas holiday, because the state is going to press, why didn't you do all of this sooner? And I do think that the defense, I possibly reached out to him late. Those are just my own personal thoughts on this.
Report in this case?
Those type of reports are ordered by the actual judge. So if it's not ordered by the judge, then there is no report. I was retained by the defense, and when the defense or the prosecution, whoever retains me, they ask a question, and I'm the one who is evaluating the question that they're posing. But those type of reports are typically ordered by a judge.
What was the question in this case?
The question in this case was to again evaluate or assess the issue of premeditation?
That's not a question. What was the question in this case?
That was the question.
To evaluate
I'm
premeditation is
sure,
not a
I'm
question.
Sure. Okay. Determine whether or not Mr. Chen had premeditation in this particular case. I'm not sure how you want me to word it.
Okay.
That's what I was asked to evaluate.
Okay. Let's go to the test that you administered in the 50-minute time period you met with Ms.
So he met with him for 3.5 hours. Let me know if this sounds better. So if this volume is good, let me know in the chat if this is good. If I need to come back from the mic a little bit, I can. Um, the state was a little feisty with him, but I think the state was understandably frustrated, and I think he was put in a difficult situation because he was brought onto the case late, which is not like that's not his fault that he was brought on late. Um, but he accepted the case, and the case started on Monday, and the jury was not able, so the court wasn't able to what's the word? Because I see that the court audio is low, and so that's why I tried to turn myself down to try to kind of match it. I am not Recovery Addict. So Recovery Addict is the phenomenal audio, person. I tried to boost it the way that I think I can, but so we're doing our best over here. But this was just difficult, but there it is going to get to an interesting part of premeditation and his thoughts on whether Mr. Chen had the ability to like form premeditation, because he's going to blame like anxiety, possible substances, voluntary and intoxication, and the state is not going to have it at all.
Mr. Chen in the Davidson County Jail. TOGRA is intended to measure reasoning and critical thinking. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Chen, with a 94, was within the standard deviation, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you'd agree that school records probably also could indicate someone's level of reasoning and critical thinking. Is that right?
They could. However, there can be a little bit of politics when it comes to school records, like individual education programs or 504 plans. Sometimes individuals can be labeled or mislabeled depending on their behaviors in school. And so I would not use school records as the only standard in making an opinion.
There's going to be a whole bunch of coughing right here. If you're triggered by coughing, so there's Recovery Addicts was going to start accounting, starting to count the coughs.
So did you review Mr. Chen's college transcripts?
No, I did not.
Are you aware that he had a scholarship to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga?
Yes, and I actually asked how did that happen, given some of the information that I learned about his, some of his own reports about his behavior in school. I was curious about that he did earn a scholarship, but different scholarships have different requirements. So I know that the scholarship that I'm aware of, he likely wouldn't have been necessarily a person that would have gotten some scholarship I know about. However, yes, he did report that he had a scholarship.
What does reasoning and critical thinking have to do with affective aggression?
So there must be something in the report that talks about affective aggression versus there's going to be a different one. So let's say affective aggression maybe versus predator. So let me let it play to figure out what the other one that he's going to say.
Well, I don't think the two are directly related. However, one must have a certain level of reasoning and critical thinking ability to be responsible, knowing, or intelligent. One must have those attributes. So part of the reason why I did that testing was to get an idea of how he's functioning cognitively. And he's functioning in the average range in terms of when compared to other adults. So that's why I gave that test.
Okay, and did this test
But I think he gave him the TOVA, which is the test of attention, variable attention, something like that. He gave him an attention test, and Jason Chen was in the average range, but I would have expected maybe a short Wechsler test or like some type of intelligence, but it is what it is.
measure how he was functioning cognitively on November 23rd, 2022?
No, ma'am. However, I will say that intelligence cognitive functioning tends to be stable unless something happens like a traumatic brain injury or some type of other injury. Typically, intelligence or functioning is stable, particularly at a certain age group in the lifespan.
I understand. So if he was functioning cognitively in January of 2025, then most likely he was functioning cognitively in November of 2022 based on what you just said.
Yes, in the absence of substances, absolutely.
And personality assessment inventory.
We all know the PAI, so that's a very common one. It's, I think, over 300 questions, and it gives an assessment of personality because he was given 3 tests because he met with Jason Chen for 3.5 hours and administered 3 tests and a clinical interview. The 3rd test, because we talked about the TOVA, the PAI, and then the trauma symptom inventory.
Which one of these tests takes 16 minutes?
TOVA.
The TOVA.
And then how long do the other 2 tests take?
Depends. So he's gonna say it depends. We're gonna fast forward past that part. And then we're gonna get into like whether he might be a psychopath. Like and so I have some thoughts on this part, but we're just gonna play it. All right. I'm trying to get to the right part. I was trying to skip a little and I skipped too far. Okay. All right. So let's start from here.
Since you reviewed the discovery in this case, Dr. Lewis, can you describe some of the things that the defendant did after he murdered Jasmine Pace?
He visited a convenience store or
So the defense is not going to want some stuff to come in.
I don't know the relevancy regarding his qualifications. I don't know how that question answers. This is for here.
It seems like it could apply to both, I guess, in the sense that's clearly relevant to his opinion. It may be relevant to his qualifications. He gives great weight to it, not much weight to it. So at this point, feel free to renew your objection otherwise at any time. It gets raised to the floor. Yes.
Okay, continue, Dr. Lewis.
he went to go purchase cleaning products.
And what else?
He also moved the victim's vehicle. He used the cleaning products to clean up his apartment.
And what else?
He left the apartment, I believe, to stay with his parents.
And what else?
I'm not sure what else you're asking me.
How much weight do you give to what a defendant does after a murder when it comes to premeditation?
When it comes to premeditation, I give it great weight. I find those details, quite frankly, to be aggravating.
What do you mean?
What I mean is that essentially, if those things, or if those actions are the actions he took, then it appears that he attempted to hide or cover up whatever act that he committed. So I take great weight to that. I found that aggravating. However, I do not find that it is suggestive of premeditation. Quite frankly, I find it to be the opposite in terms of the individuals that I work with inside the carceral environment. If they engage in forethought or planning, they typically would not do the actions in the way that it was reported that Mr. Chen did. It doesn't fit the profile of someone who engaged in forethought and planning.
But in Tennessee, premeditation.
So I guess he's trying to say that if somebody was planning to do it, that they would already have the materials. But to me, so, and remember, I'm not a forensic psychologist, but just because somebody bought those items to cover up after the fact, to me, it shows that they're trying to get away with a crime. That's the only thing I get from it personally. I don't, I don't, I didn't come to the same conclusion he did. That's just.
Doesn't require planning, right, Dr. Lewis?
And based on what I read in terms of premeditation, it means that you have to have some type of forethought before the action is done.
And that forethought could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 second. So that's where I love following true crime. I'm not a forensic psychologist, but I've learned a lot watching true crime.
You'd agree that somebody who is under the influence of a substance would have, how would you say it?
Welcome to everybody that's watching. I just wanted to clarify what's currently happening. So this was a last minute, the weekend before court, the defense files his report and his so his opinion is that it couldn't have been premeditated, capital M. Like that's his opinion, and due to mental health reasons, but there was no specific diagnosis given. He's later going to say there is no specific diagnosis, and the state just found this out the weekend before trial. So trial started Monday. And normally this evidence would be submitted, or the defense would at least give the state a heads up. Like, we have a mental health expert. There might be mental health testimony that comes in based on what this expert says, because then the state would have their own expert ready. There would be time to depose this individual. It's mine. I don't think this was there was no deposition given prior to trial. So trial started yesterday. And this all happened yesterday. And the judge, before this proffer, so this is a proffer outside of the presence of the jury. This is just for appeal purposes only. So this is just for the appeal, because the judge excluded his testimony. All right. So just a heads up. This was and the fact that she was 60 times, I don't know if that would prove premeditation. It's definitely a heinous act. Like, it's definitely that's a lot. And we will see what the jury kind of decides with this case. But I was asked to cover this because some of this was confusing, and so I like being able to help clarify some things.
Well, a difficulty completing tasks that a sober person may be able to complete, correct?
They probably wouldn't be able to do it in the exact same way. But someone who's been doing substances for quite some time, they may be able to function a little bit better than someone who perhaps is just starting stuff.
So if Mr. Chen was a regular marijuana user, he probably could have functioned a lot better if he was under the influence of that substance?
He may have been able to. However, he also said that he used wax, which wax is a much greater concentration of marijuana or THC.
Do you take into consideration when forming your opinion that criminal defendants will most likely say whatever they need to say instead of going to prison for the rest of their life?
Absolutely.
How is that factored into your decision here?
I didn't give great weight to it. It's part of the decision, but I didn't give great weight to the use of the substance. I gave more weight to the personality profile type that he fits into, more so than the use of a substance. He did report that he used a substance. The testing shows that he's likely a substance abuser. However, that is not something that I gave great weight to.
You did not give great weight to the use of a substance.
Great weight? No. It is a part of it. But I did not give great weight to it because, as you mentioned, he reported that he used a substance. But that's not something where I'm hinging my decision solely on substance use.
What did you give great weight to?
What I gave great weight to was the personality profile type that he fits. For example, my understanding is that the one theory is that he planned, or he planned this murder because the victim was down. So if you understand or if you work with individuals who have a psychopathic or psychopathic personality, or who are a sociopath, you will learn that the details.
So this is why y'all asked me to cover these things. So an individual can commit a premeditated capital M and not be a psychopath. So those two things, just because somebody doesn't have psychopathic or sociopathic traits, doesn't necessarily mean that they can't form that intent. Um, and some of the reasonings he's going to give is that he's never been convicted of a crime, and like this was his first major thing that came up. That we don't know of a history of any of any IPV, but like it's it's this was so I didn't, and that's where people can, so I wouldn't have been a good expert for this particular case, because I would have come to I wouldn't personally say this, but that's just my thoughts. He's gonna give his explanation. Now, people that do have conduct disorder or that do have antisocial personality, they normally do have a history of multiple things, multiple violations. I think of Wade Wilson had multiple in and out of jail, multiple issues. And so, but yeah.
As is mentioned in the theory that's been presented, it is not consistent with it's not consistent with the evidence. Someone who um, would conduct an act of that sort, they build gradually. You don't just start out a murder in that type of.
So that's where I don't know. So that's where, and I think this is just his opinion, his theory, uh, and I don't know. So I'm just gonna press play.
Or murdering or harming others in that type of way. That is a gradual type of violence or aggression. So what I was looking at his personality profile type, and then I also was looking at the different theories that were presented. And so what I'm saying is that we would expect to see other things within his personality profile type. There should be other violence or aggression. There should be other charges of violence and aggression. There should be a history there should be a known history of maybe intimate partner violence. There's a lot of things that should be within personality profile type and within the evidence, given the theory that's been presented, that's not there.
How many of Mr. Chen's former girlfriends did you speak with?
None.
How many of Mr. Chen's friends did you speak with?
None.
How many of Mr. Chen's family members did you interview?
None. I reviewed what was written in the discovery.
So you're basing your knowledge on Mr. Chen's prior violent history on what Mr. Chen told you.
And I'm also looking at the legal record. Did you produce some charges for Mr. Chen in terms of violence and aggression? Because
So that's where they got a little spicy because he just said, "Could you produce some charges for Mr. Chen?" they got a little spicy going back and forth, but okay, we're gonna keep it going.
typically that's what those individuals like that, that's what they have at a much younger age. And then now they start at 10, 11, or 12 years old.
Yeah, so the jury, so they're going to excuse because the jury's going to walk by. Okay, so I want to get to the part where the defense actually starts to say what they want for him to say. Let me see what this part is. Okay. So this is the defense getting in the information that they want to get on the record. I'm going to fast forward if they go through any of the history that we've already heard.
It looks like, yeah, the wrong scratch text up to
Oh, yeah, there were some technical difficulties getting everything back on. Okay. All right, there we go. It's thinking about it. It's thinking. There we go.
All right, Dr. Lewis. I want to ask you about the methodology that you used in this assessment. What validated psychological tools did you employ in your assessments of Jason Chen?
The psychological tools that are both valid and reliable are the TOBRA, the TSI-2, and the PAI, broadly and well-known instruments.
Are there, if you had more time to spend with Jason, are there other tests that you would have performed?
No.
So I thought they said TOVA. He said TOGRA. I've never given that one. It's a test of general reasoning ability. I've never given that one. So it's the TOGRA, TOGRA, test of general reasoning ability. I've never given that one before.
I mean, certainly there are numerous tests that we have at our disposal, but I don't think that would have been necessary. In fact, a lot of mental status at the time of defense evaluations don't use testing at all because psychiatrists and psychologists perform. So a lot of times testing is not even used.
Are the methods that you use consistent with the guidelines recognized by professional organizations like the American Psychological Association?
Yes.
And you don't have to go through it, but are you able to cite research and case studies that support the evaluation analysis that you did on Mr. Chen's or Jason's psychological state?
Yes.
And is it relevant to premeditation?
Directly relevant to the issue of premeditation, just like most legal questions, there's nothing that's going to directly load on any type of legal issue. However, those are tools, yes, that are used to answer some of the legal questions and controversies that emerge.
Do you believe that you were provided all the relevant materials, including evidence including evidence to ensure that your assessment is objective?
that is objective, yes, I strive for objectivity, but as I mentioned earlier, with the introduction of more information or data that's objective, my opinion could change. However, based on what was available to me, as I mentioned in the memorandum, that is how I form those are the bases of how I form my opinion.
In your opinion, you say when to a reasonable degree of psychological certainty. What does that mean in the context of your opinion?
That means just like in any type of psychological science or practice, it is highly likely that what I'm saying is correct. However, when it comes to behaviors, actions, etc., we cannot say definitively anything. So that is what that means. That says that means that given the resources that I've been given, also the evaluation, the psychological test, etc., that to the highest degree to which is possible as a psychologist or a psychiatrist, this is what my opinion is. However, we can't say anything definitively.
Well, that's my question is, why can't you say this, your opinion with certainty? Absolute certainty.
It is. I am certain of my opinion. However, to say absolutely certain, I would have had to be in the room when these things were occurring, which none of us were. So I can't say this is absolutely what happened. I cannot say that because none of us can say that. However, based on the information, the data, the testing, the evaluation, it is highly likely that the opinion that I reached is the accurate.
Would you characterize your opinion as based on speculation?
No.
Why not?
Because I used and reviewed all the evidence that was in the discovery. I also conducted psychological.
I want to answer this question. So the defense is attempting to say that that Jason Chen did not premeditate, that they didn't say capacity, but that this wasn't premeditated. That's what the defense is trying to say, because that would be manslaughter or second degree versus first degree, depending on the state. I'm not exactly sure, but it would break it down. It would bring it down from first degree because he's charged with first degree.
Testing. I reviewed his legal history again, the things that are in the documentation. So speculation alone, based on my understanding, would be not using any form of evidence, not trying to use any type of objective psychological testing that's both valid and reliable. Those type of things, I think, I would characterize as speculation. However, when you use a multi-method approach, as I did, I would not characterize my final conclusion as speculative.
Did you make any assumptions that was unsupported by the evidence informing your conclusion?
No.
So can you explain to the court how your psychological insights from your evaluation into the mind of Jason Chen are relevant to the legal question of premeditation?
Okay, so premeditation is arguably something about one's mental status or mental state during the commission of an act. So just like any other mental status related evaluation, I am assessing and evaluating not only what came before, during, and after the act, but also I'm also looking at the personality profile of the individual. So I'm using all those things in order to answer the legal question. Typically, again, when it comes to legal questions like competency to stand trial, like mental status at the time of the offense, violence risk, etc., there's no legal question that psychologists or psychiatrists can directly answer in the way that you all are trying to characterize it. What we do is we use all the information that we have available, data, interviewing, observations,
I forgot the question.
testing, etc., to answer the legal question. but it's not like A plus B equals C. That is not how these things work. Like for example, there's no real test of premeditation. There's no test of mental status at the time of the event. We use the information that we have in the testing, and
defendants can lie, and so they can. It is what it is. Because
the level of questioning and training that we have to make to give the court answers to its controversy.
So sticking with the premeditation, particularly in cases with premeditation or where you're dealing with intent, can you elaborate on the specific experience conducting those types of forensic evaluations?
So I'm gonna skip past that part, his past experience, because I want to just stick to his opinions in this case.
IQ or functioning.
Yeah, I want to stick to this case.
So can you explain your role as a forensic psychologist and how it's distinct from a psychiatrist or a
Yeah, we already know the difference between a psychologist and clinic. Yeah, we already know that part. Let's see.
I reviewed the entire discovery.
So what did he review for this case? Really, I didn't think. I understand why the state wanted to keep it out, but all right, let's play from here. And I have the full link down in the description. I think they just had to pause again because the jury was walking by the door.
Sorry, that Mr. Whiteford shut them jurors around as far as figuring out when to do that, I should say. Please continue.
Let me start over. The question is whether, right here, let me say this. Can you explain the psychological concepts of emotional regulation, impulsivity, and how they're relevant in this case?
That's good.
So emotional regulation and impulsivity are important to this case because often people who commit murder or other heinous acts of violence, it tends to be in a heightened state or what I call affective aggression or violence. So someone who has trouble,
And he's saying affective, AFFECTIVE, so affective, like affect, and affective aggression, according to Google, is a type of aggression that involves physical or emotional harm to another person as a result of negative emotions. It's also known as hostile aggression or emotional or a hostile attack. And that's where I'm not completely sure because it seems like something could be emotional and still be premeditated. I don't know where the emotion would mean that it wasn't necessarily premeditated. This came up with Ali Abulaban. He was trying to say it was a crime of passion, but there were things that he did that made it look, and the jury convicted him of first degree. So the listening device, his planning, the things he did before and after, hiding the weapon, all those things. I also forgot to mention, so trigger warning for this case. Jason Chen. So that what happened to this victim in this case is unthinkable. I have the details in the description if you would like to look deeper into this case. Because he placed her in a suitcase, but I don't know if I can say. Mm, I don't know if I, but like, so I think I can say dismembered, but this was a very, very, and I think the jury's going to have to see pictures of some of these things. And I believe the suitcase was then thrown, I want to say the river. I want to say it was thrown in the river. I could be wrong. Correct me in the chat if I'm wrong.
regulating their emotions, or someone who is quick to anger and also is impulsive, they are likely to engage in behavior without thinking. And a lot of times, our jails and our prisons are filled with people who have committed acts out of being anger, not thinking, impulsive. So emotional regulation and impulsivity are two, what in my opinion, major factors in most crimes when it comes to aggression and violence.
So one of the tests you did was, is it called TOBRA? How do you pronounce it?
It's called the TOBRA.
TOBRA. And you conducted the TOBRA.
And he was in the average range, so that was his general capacity. Because, which is good that he didn't lie. So it seems like he didn't try to fake that test. It's a test of reasoning and critical thinking. I'm gonna skip that part. And then he also gave him the trauma symptom inventory. But you're giving this to this individual after they've been incarcerated, and the act of like what he did to the victim. So, because he's gonna say he was a victim of childhood trauma, but I don't know. It's a whole thing.
In the TSI-2, you know that Jason had anxious arousal and intrusive experiences. How do these findings support your conclusion that Jason's actions were likely reactive and premeditated?
In terms of supporting it, it basically builds a profile of how he's functioning. This is someone who likely has bad memories about something that has happened to them, experiences anxiety, which, is worry or restlessness. Individuals like that may be quick to agitation. They may engage in behaviors to reduce tension, like using marijuana or alcohol. This is developing a profile of how this person is functioning daily.
How does your reliance on the empirical testing, using those the tests that you did, and I guess the evidence and discovery that you received, ensure that your conclusions are not speculative?
Yeah, I'm gonna fast forward past the speculative part. All right. And so, because he didn't give him a particular diagnosis, he's just saying because he had anxiety, he couldn't form premeditation. Like that's my understanding of.
That testing. So it is very reliable.
Is it that your findings and conclusions that Jason Chen couldn't have formed the requisite mental state premeditation? Is that your opinion?
My opinion that it's highly unlikely that he formed the requisite premeditation.
And highly unlikely. So I think that was the other reason why the judge, and I don't know that testimony, because he's saying it's highly unlikely that he could have done premeditated, that he could have had premeditation, but yeah, I'll rewind it so we can hear it again. I'll rewind it.
That your findings and conclusions that Jason Chen couldn't have formed the requisite mental state premeditation, is that your opinion?
My opinion that it's highly unlikely that he formed the requisite premeditation.
The jurors ready for lunch? Yes, Your Honor. The jurors walk by, they're done. One more question. All right, go ahead.
So they paused it for the jurors to walk by for lunch. And then let's see.
Report. As you can see, it's the exact opposite where we were last week.
Okay. And so I think that was the end of it. I think that was, yeah. And then they go into opening statements. So thank you to the person that asked me to cover this. This testimony will not be heard by the jury. The expert's opinion is that Jason Chen was not able to, highly unlikely that he could have formed premeditation, and so the state is like, no. No, this testimony, number one, it's coming in too late, and the state did not want this testimony in. Trials started on the 13th, yesterday, and they received the report like, I want to say it was on Saturday, but like maybe it was either Friday or Saturday. They received the actual report. They were not able to voir dire the jury on, do you think anxiety plays a role in crime? Because they would have asked different questions if they knew this type of testimony could potentially come in. And so that's why the state fought very hard to keep this one out. I will just continue to check on this case. The defense, the defense's strategy, because in opening statements they call it a crime of passion. That's the first time that he admitted that, or that the defense has admitted that yes, he did do this, but they're saying he didn't mean to. So that's what, or I don't know, it was a crime of passion. That's what they're trying to claim. We will see what the jury decides. Um, if this had come in earlier, so even if it was 30 days before, if this had happened sooner, I think the state could have had a rebuttal expert or had rebuttal testimony. They could have done their own assessment, and they might have brought in specific evidence to rebut this. But it came in so late that the state was just like, no, and the judge agreed to exclude it. They did this proffer just to reserve the testimony for any potential appeal. I don't know that the testimony would have been helpful, because it was just like, I because and if you notice, the state really didn't cross, but I think the state had already spent so much time going before, talking about his, opinion. The state had already kind of done that part before, during their part. But, like, I mean, 60 times, like, that's and Recovery Addict is following this case. I believe he's streaming it on a daily basis. I do have the link to RA's channel in the description. I also have the link I used, which was from Law and Crime. So I have both of those there. I like Court TV because they normally put timestamps in, but these were the chats that I found. Yes, so there was no other psychiatric evaluations. The state did not do a psychiatric evaluation. Self def- there he It seemed like they were trying to say that she tried to come at him with a wine bottle, or he was mad because she got wine. There were some weird things that came up. Grizzly True Crime. I like watching it with her as well, because she gives a little bit more commentary. So RA normally streams with amazing audio. Grizzly True Crime, she normally gives the spiciness that I need. And so I love a good timestamp. I love a good timestamp. And my heart goes out to the family, because I saw in the chat that one of the family members was not aware that the defense was going to say that yes, he did it, and that they were the first witness for the state. And I'm sure it was hard for the family. And so the family can hopefully rest assured that at minimum, that he's going to be found guilty of something. It's just going to just like what he's trying to get a lesser crime. The jury could convict him of that higher charge. And this jury is sequestered, which doesn't always happen. I don't know if it's because this is a high profile. I wasn't exactly sure why they decided to sequester the jury. Maybe because of all the coverage of the case, just to make sure that it was handled in a way that was appropriate. And so I'm gonna go feed my kiddo. I will see y'all on Saturday. I hope y'all have a good one. Bye.